Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you get more information and listen to previous shows at our website, which is behind me, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week we focus on cool things and people who are cool in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Hank Eder, who's I like what he says, the chief instigator at Hank Eder PR and Marketing. Hank, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Hello, my friends and fans
who are watching this. I should mention that Hank runs a one-stop shop for all things branding, web design, branded content, press releases, and more. I love what he says. Stop juggling multiple vendors and just ask Hank. And are you even wearing the Just Ask Hank, or you have a hat that says that sometimes?
I should have a hat that says Just Ask Hank, but instead I'm wearing my Hank the PR guy hat.
Okay, we'll talk about that title as well. But I have to throw out a compliment to you, Hank. And what you say is, a lot of people say it, but it's certainly true with you. You have a marketing, branding, website question, digital question. Call Hank, and either he's going to get the answer for you, or he's going to help you get the answer. So I want to thank you over the years for all the help you've given me.
Oh, you're welcome.
You really rock. But the question, Hank, I always ask people, first time I have on webcast, and you've been on a few times in the past, is in terms of, as a kid, you grew up where? In Florida, I think it was?
Yeah, I grew up on Miami Beach.
Okay.
I am what the local people here call a halfback. Born in the Bronx, brought up in South Florida. Now I'm halfback because I'm in beautiful Mars Hill, North Carolina.
So, yeah, I remember you told me you grew up in the Bronx. I'm from New York originally. When did you get to Florida?
Oh, my family moved there when I went to kindergarten in New York, and then that was the end of it. Although I used to go back to the Bronx in the summers until I was 14. And at that point, my parents remembered how much trouble my brothers got into in their teenage years in the Bronx, and they stopped sending me there. I had a favorite aunt and uncle there, but that was the end of it when I turned 14.
So when you were a kid then, growing up and born in Bronx, eventually in Florida, did you always know you wanted to be a marketing guy? How did you find out? How did you get into this whole field?
Well, that's a very, very good question, Blaine. I had a favorite cousin. She was almost another generation from me. She's been gone quite some time now. My cousin Carol, she was an advertising copywriter, and she worked at a pretty high level in New York advertising agencies. She was a copywriter for an agency that was called Doyle, Dane, and Bernbach.
Yeah, my uncle worked for that agency. Maybe she even knew him. Who knows?
She probably did. Her name was Carol Ackhoff.
Right.
That was a married name. But she was always an inspiration to me. Even when I was a little kid, we used to have amazing conversations, and she wrote short stories, and, we just had a good time sharing things. I used to make tapes back when we had reel-to-reel tapes. I'd make her little tapes when I was like 10 years old and send them off to her with creative ideas on them and stuff. So I thought I wanted to be at first an advertising copywriter, but then I decided I wanted to be a news reporter, and I studied journalism, and I got a degree in journalism from the University of Florida. And I worked for several newspapers. I was even a reporter for the Miami Herald for a time, in what almost seems like another lifetime ago. When I left reporting, I was a graphics designer for a time during the time that nobody had computers. We didn't use computers for graphics design. Then I worked for several ad agencies. I worked for PR agencies. I worked for a marketing firm. And I did a lot of those things over the years. So what I'm able to do now with that kind of a background and that kind of an education is I am the point of customer service and the quality control and the creative brains behind my agency. And I have a team that I work with to get the jobs done.
Well, that's one of the reasons I've always kind of enjoyed speaking with you and working with you, because as you said, that if I had kind of a marketing question or something I wanted to do, almost like if you put it on your cap, call Hank, but you would either be able to answer it for me or tell me how to answer or tell me how to find out the help. And that's, even when I look back at what you have on the board there, you call it a full service digital agency. I mean, you're calling it full service, it means exactly what?
Well, it means that I'll do all of these different things. Do you want to run paid ad campaigns, Google pay-per-clicks, or social media ad campaigns that are paid ad campaigns, more than just boosting posts, but actual coordinated ad campaigns? I can do that. You need logo design and branding, full branding books with iterations for all the places you'd use it, color schemes, fonts, and everything. I can do that. Do you want your website built? I'll do that. And we'll take your branding and we'll incorporate it into your website. But since I'm also a copywriter, we will make sure that what goes onto your site is branded copywriting. Every word that we speak on your site reflects the integrity and the quality and the personality of your brand. And as a result, you get such an integrated, coordinated experience, and the final product is very, very cohesive. I eliminate the need to go to 5 or 6 different vendors to get all of that done.
Well, not only that, what you do, which I think a lot of folks don't do, is there is a consistency. So when you're thinking about Hank Eder, the full service digital agency, it's the same picture all the time. It's not different on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on, too many places have different pictures. How do you pick up these skills? In other words, you went to college as an undergraduate, but all this stuff is kind of after undergraduate stuff. How do you learn
That's
it?
right. I never went on after I got a bachelor's degree. And the funny thing is, they gave me a Bachelor of Science in journalism. I
Right.
didn't know there was such a thing until I applied for my diploma towards the end of my college education, and I applied for a Bachelor of Arts in journalism, and they said, "No, that's a Bachelor of Science." I said, "Well, excuse me, the only science I've ever taken here, I was required to take, like one science
Right.
course,
Join the
like
crowd. Right.
yeah, like meteorology or something like that. Or yeah, but I got a Bachelor of Science in journalism, but everything came afterwards. I worked for the newspapers. I worked in the graphics area of a newspaper in South Florida, a small newspaper in South Florida, but I cut my teeth there in graphics. I just had these different opportunities to do different things. And yeah, I've had just all these experiences that happened after college. And
Even now.
they've,
Yeah.
yeah,
Even now, if somebody's listening, talk about even to this day, again, I've always admired you for that fact. You're always picking up new skills or always learning, it's like it's really kind of cool. You're kind of on the cutting edge of the curve, that something comes out and you call Hank or speak to Hank, he'll know about it or he'll know how to do it. Do you study it? Do you look YouTube clips? How do you pick up this knowledge?
I'm just like immersed in it all the time. But let me give you an example. About 8, 9 years ago, when we started doing websites for clients, because when I opened this incarnation of Hank Eder PR and marketing, I originally had the notion I was mostly going to do copywriting, press releases, content writing. But as you know, when you are a solo entrepreneur or a solopreneur, you go where your customers want you to go. And when they started asking me, can you do websites for us? Well, in the very beginning, I had this young woman. She was probably 24 years old at the time, who was dynamite at doing websites, but she hadn't really built a reputation for herself, and she wanted to do some for me that she could put out there and say, look, this is what I do, and move on from there. So I had her building websites for a number of clients, and she did a beautiful job. And, she came to me with such an amazingly low price for these websites that it would have been embarrassing for me to pay her what she was asking. She wanted, you know, $500 to do an e-commerce website that had 30 products. I got her a few $1,000s for it. She was happy. I was happy. The customer was happy. Everybody was happy. But the bottom line is, when it got past the point that it was sustainable for her to be a freelancer, she took a full-time job somewhere, and I didn't have my web builder anymore. And the first thing I had to do was learn how to service the websites that we already had. And these were WordPress built
Sure.
websites. And she was very gracious in that she sat down with me and showed me how to update products, how to do this, how to do that. And then she moved on. So I started doing that. And then people started asking me, can you build my website? And I said, well, yeah, I went out on a limb and said, yeah, the first ones were scary. Well, as the years went by, I did any number of websites. But then, even though I'm an anachronism, a boomer who can build websites, I mean, that's almost unheard of. I came to the point in my development where I said to myself, this old boomer doesn't need to be doing websites, but you can get those websites from my agency because I have a team in my agency. I have a web designer, I have a logo designer, graphics designer, ad specialists, all of these different people. We're all under this one umbrella. So you come to me, you deal with me, you tell me what you need. I get it all coordinated. I get you your site, I get you your logo, I get you press releases, I get you whatever it is you want. And yeah, you can't do it all. That's one of the mistakes that solopreneurs make too, is thinking you're going to wear all the hats. You
Well,
can't wear all the
the beauty of what
hats.
you're saying, what I say, Hank, is the idea it's also like one-stop shopping, because as you were saying, for me to go out as an individual and contact 17 different people, I could do it, but it's kind of a pain. It's much easier to call up Hank Eder. I still know you as the PR guy, Hank Eder, and to have you do that all. But points out also back to the PR guy, another thing that I think you've done over the years is you've gotten away from something that hurt my father's business, and he just concentrated on one activity, one client. And he lost the one client, and the business went, that was the end of the business. So I've seen you over the years is grow or evolve into many different new areas, and each time you're opening up marketing opportunities, I guess, for you and your clients. Which I
That's
think is kind of cool. Talk about, Hank, we were talking off the air about websites. So we'll start with the basics and we'll talk about some other things as well. But websites, people still need them. Would you say that's true? Do
Oh,
people
we
still?
really do need
Okay.
websites. I mean, to some people, websites aren't much more than a glorified digital business card,
Okay.
but they can be so much more. And if you've got branded content that is aimed at your target audience and the target audience's pain points, you actually can begin converting visitors into potential customers and then into customers. I'd like to bring up that my pet peeve about websites, and I see this all the time. I see a flashy website. I see a website that's so cutting edge, so beautiful, so incredible that I know that somebody probably paid at least 10 grand for that website. It's got all the bells and whistles. It has scrolling things going by. It has parallax photos. When you scroll down, the photos move up and down for you. It's got car chases. Well, maybe not car chases. But my point being is I walk away from a lot of those websites scratching my head saying, what do they do? What service are they offering? Who is their target market? Who are they serving? What are their target audience's pain points? Because at the end of the day, a lot of websites are towering monuments to the ego of the person who puts them out. I do this, I do that, I have these degrees, I have these credentials, I. But at the end of the day, the person who's going to buy the website from you or who's going to be your customer for any of those things wants to know, what can you do to solve their problem? They have a problem that they want solved. What can you do to solve that problem? If you could show them honestly that you can solve that problem, they're going to come to you. They're going to ask for your service or your product. It's like an author that I is a client of mine, and we've had this conversation, and he gets it. He's not selling books. I mean, he is selling books, but his books are inner transformation. That's what they're about. He's selling transformation, that somebody starts here and they move to here, or they start here and they move up, up, up. He's selling that transformation. to his readers. He's not selling books.
Isn't also the key too, Hank, or I believe in this, is that whatever you do for the website, are you getting the results kind of you want? So if you have a website and spending a lot of money or a little money on it, are you getting results? And more importantly, I guess, can you measure the results? So if you put a lot of money into a website and try and get people to go to it, and they're either not going to it or they're not buying from it, you're wasting your money. We'd say that's true?
That is true. I mean, but there are definitely ways to track who's coming and even where
Sure.
they're coming from. One of the easiest ways to do that is with Google. Google gives you the tools to track all of your, all of your visits, whether they were organic visits, whether they were from paid ads that you put out, wherever they came from. They'll even tell you what kind of browser the person was using and, what kind of a computer they were on. So you can track these things. And there's other ways you can do it too. Like if you run a promotion, even if it's organic, you put something on your website and it's got a code. And when that code comes back to you, you know where the person found it because that code is tied to that particular promotion that you're doing on your website.
And if they contact Hank, you can help set those kinds of things up?
Yeah, we could set those kind of things up for sure.
Because if you're spending money, I contend you should be able to measure the results of it, wherever you put in. There's so many people, you were saying before about people have these fantastic looking websites. I find so many people spend money just on advertising in general. They have no idea if it works, and I contend, Hank, unless you can measure what you're doing, you're almost throwing away your money for the most part.
That is true. Well, you never know, with advertising, the one thing that is a given in advertising, and let's take newspaper advertising, even though people are going to tell you nobody advertises in newspapers anymore, but that's not true. They're filled with advertising. Oh, I might sneeze. I'm hoping I don't. But the point being, the only given with a newspaper ad is that you put your money down, you send in your copy, it's guaranteed that ad is going to show up in the newspaper. And that's about all you can depend on, unless you have some way of tracking it. You could put coupons
Right.
in your ad. You could mention this ad, for
Right.
5% off or something like that.
Well, that
So
was
there
what
are.
same thing too. I used to help people do verbal coupons, so you can even do something on Facebook or whatever. Just, you want to see if you can get some results because I contend, Hank, a lot of people spend a lot of money on advertising and either get very poor results or have no idea what the results are, so that's just me personally, in terms of what we're going to advertise. Talk about, Hank, aside from the website, so you can help build and construct it and monitor it. Can you set up a website so it kind of runs itself, or is that the goal of the website?
Well, that can be done within within certain parameters, but there is always maintenance that'll need to be done to websites. And today, there's so much change that happens so quickly that you have to be able to keep up with it. A lot of websites, well, the WordPress built websites, a lot of things are done in plugins. And plugins, when they start getting old and new versions come out of plugins, and usually the new versions are free. Most of the plugins are free. Some plugins you have to pay a small price for the added functionality. But my point being is that as the plugins get old, it's believed that hackers can exploit weaknesses in the older versions of the plugins, and it leaves your website open for potential invasion by brute force attacks or other types of hacking. In fact, I probably have this statistic not 100% correct, but every day worldwide, there's something like 30 to 40,000 WordPress websites get hacked. And that can be not totally prevented, but it can be alleviated. Any website that I build for a customer, I put on a free version of something called WordFence. And WordFence sets up a firewall and it can block IPs and it can block countries that are known to be, have attackers. And there's a paid version. Only very few of my clients have gone to the paid version, but I found it's amazing what WordFence can do to block attacks. I sent a report to one of my clients about 3 weeks ago that in 1 week, the word fence that I installed for them had blocked 4,000 attempted brute force attacks. And those are done by bots. It's not somebody that's sitting there typing, 4,000 attacks, but I don't know why they do it. They program these bots. They can take over your website. I knew of a business years ago that put out electromagnetic field protection devices. And about 8 years ago, their website was taken over by a radical Middle East group that hijacked their site to put their propaganda messages up there. And it took them about 2 weeks to back out of it and rescue their own site.
I had similar experience with a client who site got hijacked and became a porno site, and it really did happen, that somebody from the Middle East or wherever they got it into it, but he never was able to get out of that. It was a really bad, really terrible thing. But again, if he has this word fence or these other products available, that'll prevent most of this stuff from happening.
They will prevent most of this stuff from happening. And occasionally, if it does happen, another thing I do with websites is I make sure that my clients, when they sign up for hosting, we make sure, even if they have to pay a little bit extra, that there's a daily and weekly backup. Because if you get one of these, if your site is taken over and you go to your host, and I say to the host, let's back up with the site as it was 1 month ago. 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be the site as it was before the attack happened. You'll lose whatever data you
Right.
put in since then, but that's a small price to pay to rescue your site.
What's scary, Hank, and you deal with it almost on a daily basis, is I would imagine a lot of your clients or prospective clients never even give any thought to backup, or they don't have any backup whatsoever. Do you find that a lot?
I do find that. And
Yeah.
I'm also not only in websites, I have clients that don't have any backup of their computer,
I
their
was going to say
files,
that.
any of that.
Right. And a lot, I would imagine, the vast majority. Hank, let's talk about something else that you and I haven't talked about yet.
Hey, before you go there,
Yeah,
may I say one thing?
two
When it
things.
comes to backing up
Right,
and setting up the systems for backing up, you and I have a mutual friend named Jensen Gelfand
right.
at Asheville Digital Lifestyle. And even if you don't live in Asheville, you could live in Miami, you can live in New York. But if you contact Jensen at Asheville Digital Lifestyle and tell him Hank and Blaine sent you, he can help you set up a whole system for it, tell you what hardware you need to get. He could set up your software and your apps to make it work. And one final answer about websites that maintain themselves. No, they really don't, because somebody like myself or somebody on my team has to go in at least twice a month and make sure that everything is kept up to date, especially in the WordPress sites.
And since you mentioned Jensen, I'll mention one thing that I love about her services, but you do the same kind of thing too, is that I reach a stage in my life that I don't want to do stuff, and I don't want to even know how to do stuff. But Jensen is so cool. He can do one of two things. He can either help you with it and set it up for you, but he can also show you how to do it if you want,
That's right.
and that's, again, back to some of the services you offer, I think, as well, which are well worth it, that you'll actually not only show somebody how to set something up, but right, you'll also teach them how to maintain it if they want.
Well, I can teach them how to do certain types of maintenance,
Right,
but if they run into problems, they'll have some issues. And
right,
sometimes for some clients, it also depends on their level of tech skills. I have clients, I give all of my clients admin privileges on their site. They have to have it because if something happens, they need to be able to assign it to somebody else, even if they don't know how to do a single thing on a WordPress site. They have to have those admin privileges. But for certain people, the speed at which they could wreck their website it would make your head spin.
well,
So
you gave a brilliant piece of advice there, Hank, because I tell people the same thing too, not only with their websites, but also if they run and I got burned on this, if they run a Facebook page, if they're administrator to a Facebook page, make sure somebody else is administrator as well, or a co-administrator, because if you ever get frozen out on Facebook, which too many people have, including me. If you're the only administrator, you're out of luck. There's the page is dead. So I think that's really good advice to tell somebody else that they can get into it, or show them how to get into it.
That's right. And I had a local man who was a pretty well-known motivational coach.
Right.
I won't mention his name, but he called me about 2 years ago, almost in a panic. Uh, my webmaster died, and none of us have any access to the site. We can't get on to do simple things. We can't do
Right.
anything.
Exactly.
And that was the only person who had administrative privileges. And I called up the hosting service, and some of them will work with you. I've had some that work with you, but this hosting service, as soon as they heard that the webmaster died, they locked us all out, and he was out of luck. Well, his luck changed for two reasons. One is I was able to go into something that's called the Wayback
Right.
Machine.
I know it. Right.
Anybody
Yeah.
who's listening can look up the Wayback Machine.
Very cool.
Every freaking website that's out there is on the Wayback Machine. So he was able to see all the things that were on his website. And he didn't hire me to rebuild it, but he paid me for the time that I took, to help him out. And it turns out his daughter was a pretty good web builder, and he had his daughter rebuild his website. So that worked out well, but it could have gone the other way, that nobody could actually have gotten on his site.
But
And he would have had to start all over again.
by the way, an aside here, since you're on the topic, and I tell people this all the time, you probably do too, is not only in terms of your websites and other social media sites you may have, but it's a good idea to share your passwords with somebody else, either spouse, significant other, or the executor of your estate or something. It's just the quick story, and you probably have other stories similar. But when my dad died, for example, at the time, you're paying for Facebook, and we couldn't close his account, and they were billing us every month for like 18 months because we didn't have his password. So I tell people that from a personal standpoint, make sure at least one other person knows all your passwords, because if something ever happened to you, they're going to be out of luck.
What
So
aspect of Facebook was he paying for? Maybe you didn't mean to say Facebook.
no, it was Facebook at the time, and I think they still have a monthly service charge. You paid a monthly service charge. Yep, that gave you. They still offer it. You can get customer service access to it. You can get somebody to
Oh, I
speak
get
to.
it. It wasn't regular
No,
Facebook.
no, it was well, they're trying to, and it was not big bucks, $9.95 a month. But you can imagine, for 18 months, my mother's paying for his Facebook account, and he was, he wasn't with her anymore. So just a good idea, back to what you were saying, backup. Always have somebody to be able to step in, something happens to you. Talk about something else you and I haven't talked about, but I wanted to, and that's your business. I guess all businesses are changing with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. Talk about you specifically, and then we'll talk about others as well. Are you into AI at all yet?
Yes, I am. I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert at
Right.
AI. I mean, I know a guy who can tell you how AI is coded, but when he talks to me, my eyes glaze over because I don't understand what he's talking about. But I do use AI in a few different ways. You know, uh, the most hyperbolic thing that I keep hearing is that you will lose your job to AI. But the reality of it is that you probably won't lose your job to AI, but you might lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI.
Good
And
point.
and
Yeah.
there's a big difference. It's still a human who's going to be doing it. But there's uh, AI is a tool. It can be used for very, very benign purposes, for very creative purposes, or it can be used to steal people's work and to make the world think that you've got skills and talents that you don't have. That tool is it's in the hands of the wielder. It's like having a rake. You could take that rake and you can tend your garden with it, or you could hit someone over the head with that rake and do some serious damage. It's
Right.
not the rake's fault. And the same thing with AI. Although there are those who are trying to claim that as AI keeps getting more and more intelligent, it somehow will be a threat to us. I don't know if that's true or not, but there are some very ethical uses for AI. For example, you have you're going to write a blog or you're going to write content for a website. I do not recommend that you ask AI to write that content for you, but You ask AI to do the research for it, and they'll give you a whole list of things that you could put into your blog. If you do ask AI to write the blog for you, you could just use that as a jumping off point and check out all the points that are in there. Make sure that you rework that in your own words and you're not taking AI material and claiming it as your own. Eventually, people are going to be able to find that out. You know, these days, if you publish a book on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, you publish that book, there's a little box that you have to check saying that you're not using AI
Oh, I
to
didn't know that,
generate
really?
this content. Yeah.
Well, even the most incredible example, just saw it yesterday, was somebody entered 18,000 pages of the transcript of the Trump trial in New York. And they, I don't know if you saw this, but they came out with a prediction. I won't mention the prediction as to who was going to win the trial, but they came out 18,000 pages, and they had a prediction as to how the jury was going to go. And two of the three AI sites came out with prediction. The third one said it didn't have enough information yet to do it. But I think that was just incredible, what's going to be out there, that to have to not go through 18,000 pages of something, and they do it within 2 seconds.
There
Or,
is that. There is that. Here in North Carolina, we have a guy who used to be a U.S. congressman,
right,
Jeff Jackson, who was one of my favorite North Carolina politicians. He never represented our district, but when it came to integrity, when it came to working for his constituents, when it came for caring, he was the best. Well, unfortunately, his district was gerrymandered out of existence. Now he's running for attorney general. But my point is, he always sends very, very informative newsletters out to anybody who's on his mailing list. And he mentioned that. He said there's this little town somewhere in North Carolina, and they needed a new water system. Just a little town. They needed a new water main. It was 80 years old and the pipes were bad and the water was terrible quality. And he got it into the budget for that little town to get their water main. But he said when the budget finally was released after months and months of, budget arguments, stalemates, congressional shutdown threats, and all that kind of stuff, he said what he did is instead of weeding through, several thousand pages of budget, he put in the keyword for that particular part of the bill, and he found out they won. And he called the mayor of the town, and they had a little congratulatory party. And yeah, AI has some really good
well,
purposes.
of course, I'll share one other with you, Hank, for you personally or anybody listening or watching this, and that is if you really want to impress a spouse or significant other, tell them, I'm telling you, Hank, and I've done this, to write a love poem, to that person. Within 2 seconds, they'll give you a love poem. If you don't like it, you can send it in 2, 3, 5, 10 times. If you want to make it a serious poem, if you want to make it a humorous poem, I don't know if you've ever used it, but it really impresses people the first time they get one of these poems. So it's just kind of a fun thing to use.
I'll tell you what I do use it for that may be somewhat similar to that.
What?
I don't know if you have seen any of my posts to social media that are called MC Biz Booma,
Oh yeah,
BIZZ Booma.
all the time. They're fun. By the way,
Yeah,
just before you talk about it, mention if anybody wants to get to see some of these other sites, how do they get to see these things you want to talk about?
what to see MC Biz
Yeah.
Booma? Look up MC Biz Booma with two Z's, MC Biz Booma. It's like boomer, but it's Booma. Look it up on TikTok, look it up on Facebook, look it up on YouTube, look it up on Instagram. MC Biz Booma is everywhere. But what MC Biz Booma is, it's like an alter ego of mine
Right. I love
in
it.
which I give these 15-second little lessons in business in rap. And it started out as a joke because I have a guy who's a mentor of mine. His name is Sajjad Hussein.
You mentioned him, yeah, to me.
Yeah, he's a mentor. And I told him one day I saw a guy, I was in the Whole Foods in Asheville, and I looked up at the cash register at this guy who was so tall. And I thought I was looking into the eyes of the rapper Snoop Dogg. And I said to him, "Oh, "You look like someone." He said, "Yeah, I know, Snoop Dogg." I said, "Yeah, you look like Snoop Dogg." He said, "Well, I wish I could make his millions." He said, "Can you rap?" He said, "No, man, I can't rap." I said, "Well, you're not going to make it that way." He said, "Can you rap?" I said, "Well, I sort of can, but who wants to watch an old white boomer rapping?" And I told Sajad that, and he said, "Nah, dog, that'll blow up." And that was the birth of MC Biz Booma. I can't say at this point in time that it has totally blown up in the sense that it gone viral, and had 50,000 hits, but it's been gaining traction little by little. And a lot of people, my most interesting experience with that was I was on the phone once with an Apple tech support guy because my system was crashed incredibly. And he said, "I know your voice. Why do I know your voice?" And I said, "Do you ever watch MC Biz Booma?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah." So
Well, talk about that. Do you write them then, or you
I
get
write
help?
them. Yeah, thanks for bringing me back to where this all started.
Right,
I write them, and 90% of them I write totally from scratch, right from
right,
my head. There's a small percentage of them that I'll occasionally get on Gemini, which is Google's version of AI.
right.
And I'll say, "Write a 4-line rap about such and such," and it'll write me a 4-line rap. And then I don't use that rap, but I look at it and it gives me some ideas of how I can structure something on this particular subject into a 4-line rap. And then I write my own with, using those ideas, but I never let it write the raps that I'm putting out there.
And what I love about them, and again, to your credit, Hank, is that they're certainly unique, or at least to me, they're unique. And one of the things you and I have talked about, which I love, is the fact that if you can make yourself unique or different than anybody else, that's kind of really cool, So if you see these raps, I just since you mentioned, just once again, how do people find these?
Just look up MC as in MC Hammer. Just look up MC Biz, Bizz, Booma, MC Biz Booma on any of the main social networks, with the exception of X, formerly known as Twitter. It's not on there, but it's on pretty much all the other social networks.
And what's so cool about it, you'll have fun just watching them. It's like I said, a short thing worth watching. Let's talk about one other thing, Hank, you're involved in too. It's just sometimes amazed at how many different things you're involved in kind of simultaneously. And you'll also be helping me on some of my website stuff. I look forward to that as well. But you also, in your spare time, you do a podcast as well. And so folks want to find out about that. Talk about the podcast you do.
Yeah, it's a radio show slash podcast. Excuse me, my voice is kind of kicking in and out right now. It's a radio show and a podcast. It makes its first appearance as a radio show, but it's not terrestrial radio anymore. It's web-based radio on a station called bizradio.us. Bizradio.us, which is the brainchild of its owner, Matt Matan, who has a long history of broadcasting in the Asheville, North Carolina area. So I put this show, which right now is called the Home Business Success Show, soon to be rebranded. I put it on bizradio.us. It shows up on Wednesday mornings, and it's it's fed into Buzzsprout, which those of you who want to start podcasts, I recommend you take at least the basic Buzzsprout account. It's very inexpensive to have it, and it will feed your podcast out to all the major podcast venues like Spotify, like Apple Podcast, like Google Podcast, and a number of those that I'm not even thinking of to name.
By the way,
But
just if I
yeah,
can jump in, first of all, thank you for mentioning that because also you were the one who got me into that as well. And I could be wrong, Hank, but I think even the basic account is free. The first 9 hours, there's no charge, and that's a very nominal charge. But thank you for the reference. And so you're mentioning that Buzzsprout gets your radio show slash podcast out all over the world, I guess.
right. Well, conceivably, it could be all over the world. and even bizradio.us, which, it's most of the people that are connected to it are in Asheville, North Carolina, but my guests are from all over the world. I've had guests from Australia. I've had guests from England, and that's the beauty of this interconnected world. Some people shy away from it and find it scary, but when I was a kid, we all know that song that becomes an earworm, which is "It's a Small World."
But
I
yeah,
mean, once
right.
you hear that, it's like trying to get it out of your head. But when I was a kid in elementary school, they taught us a song, "The world is getting littler every day. Soon there won't be any places far away. Someone makes a speech in China and it's heard in Carolina, in Alaska and Nebraska and Bombay." And that's, before there was any such thing as a computer and TV, was out in those times, but it was still going through growing pains. But my point being that, yeah, we could put our podcasts all over the world, and we have no idea where they're going to go, because once they're out there on the web, and they're out there almost forever on the web. I mean, and that's the thing too, about if you take the free, I want to go back again, if you take the free Buzzsprout account, your podcast will expire after
Right.
6 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah.
But for the whatever it is, $9.99, you can keep your podcasts on for perpetuity.
Yeah. It's bargain and they do it all for you. Hank, if somebody wants to get in touch with Hank Eder we'll talk about one of 27 different things you do. Best bet to reach you is what?
Well, the easiest way is to send me an email at Hank Eder, E-D-E-R, hank@hankeder.com. And send me an email, get in touch that way. I'll reach back out to you and we'll see what your needs are.
And for the folks who also want to check out further, I know you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn as well?
I'm
Most of
on
social media.
LinkedIn.
And how do they find you there?
Just look up Hank Eder.
Okay.
And on Instagram, for example, and on TikTok, you'll probably find me easier if you look up MC Biz Booma than if you look up Hank Eder. But you should be able to find all my social accounts with my real name, because they're not hidden. They're just not the handle on a few of them.
You a website also?
Yes, that's hankeder.com.
Okay. And
Just
let me
like you
ask you,
see, and those of us who are actually seeing the video,
right.
my name is right behind me on the screen. So hankeder.com is my
And,
website.
and let me ask you, I don't know if I've asked you this before, but if they go to hankeder.com, will they also see how to get in touch with you at all these other places you mentioned?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
There's a contact page, and there's a lot of other peripheral information on the website as well.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you, Hank Eder, for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World show. I'd also like to thank my producer, Capitacetti. Hopefully, I'll get to see you actually in person soon, if not before. Okay, buddy?
I look forward to it. It's always a pleasure seeing you, either virtually like this or preferably in person.
That'll be soon, buddy. Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.